Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch Podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and most importantly, pumpkin spice. Hey friends, and thank you so much for tuning into the show. Today's episode is pumpkin spiced and full of practical magic. I'll be talking about the magical properties of pumpkins and the spice blend that we use to flavor them, i.e., how magical is your pumpkin spice latte really? The answer is very. I'm also talking a bit about practical magic. The 90s rom-com is so popular with witches of my generation, and the continuation of the series of books on which the movie is based has only dragged us all further and further into the world of the Owens witches. Like, we're firmly planted in there now. If you're listening to this right on release day, October 9th, the newest installment of the series, Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman, which tells the story of the original Owens witch, Maria, has just come out, like just 2 days ago. And if it's even half as good as Practical Magic and The Rules of Magic, it should definitely be on your to-read list. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to all of you witches for being patient and sending your well wishes after the death of my grandfather last week. Unfortunately, this episode wasn't finished before then, and I really needed some time right after to grieve and reflect on our relationship. I guess there's no better time than Halloween to add a new ancestor to the altar, right? But I'm okay. Thank you so much. He was we weren't super close, but he really was a great, cute little grandpa. So he's actually Pepe, because he's French Canadian. And he was just really lovely and calm and patient, very patient. And for a lot of reasons, I didn't take the time to get very close to him while he was alive, I can say now. Which makes me really sad, but I have my reasons, right? But luckily, one of my most prized personality traits is something I either learned from him or that, we had in common, which is this ability to make any animal feel calm and safe. George, which I like to call him because he married a lady named Jane. After my grandmother died, he married Jane. So George and Jane. George never forced an animal to do anything it didn't want to do. And he always had cats and dogs that had obviously had a rough go in life and needed a really soft place to land. He always told me to be super patient with the cats or the dogs or whatever. And if I was patient and still and kind, they'd come to me and let me know how we can be friends. And this kind of personality trait or philosophy or whatever was really tested for me with my dearly departed bunny friend, Jimmy Hoppa, who didn't like to be snuggled. He was the softest bunny in the world. Didn't like to be snuggled or even really pet or touched. It was torture. All I wanted to do was grab him and just fluff him up all the time because he was so soft. But I didn't push it. Other people did, but I did not. I didn't push it. I waited for other signs from Jimmy that we were friends and that he felt safe. And I don't know if I would have noticed those things or, even given Jimmy the space that he needed so that we could have a really nice friendship without that lesson of patience and kindness for animals from Pepe. So, I'm really super grateful that I got that. And I'm grateful that I got to say goodbye. I've never said goodbye to a loved one who was dying before. Because honestly, I've just always been too afraid. So this was the first time, and I'm really glad we did it. We got to go to his house. He has this a very small house on a big open property on the cliffs of Lake Erie here, so very South Ontario. And this house and this property was always surrounded by bird and bat houses that he had put up, and fruit trees and bee and butterfly gardens, and a big pond, and there were outdoor shelters for any animals who happened to wander by because they're out in the country. And this place always felt like the Garden of Eden to me. So it was this really nice, it was a really nice day. It was a beautiful, breezy day. I got to see him for the last time. We got to talk. I'm really grateful I got that time. But I really needed some time afterwards to think about it. And I'm feeling a lot better now. When we said goodbye, for the last time, he told me to have a good life. And so that's what I plan to do. And I'm going to start right now by getting super jazzed about pumpkin spice. Let's do this. So even though the blend of spices known as pumpkin pie spice, has been found in recipes, dating back to the 1800s marked as pumpkin pie spice, Starbucks is definitely responsible for the overall trendiness of pumpkin spice flavored everything because of their latte. It started getting really popular in the early 2010s. Everybody was talking about the pumpkin spice latte. And before Starbucks started putting out that latte, we didn't see a lot of pumpkin spice or pumpkin pie flavored things that weren't pumpkin, By 2015, the PSL was a full-grown obsession in North America. And this is also when Starbucks started adding real pumpkin puree to the drink. So the year that they added the pumpkin, everything just blew right up, right? And it made it all terribly trendy, and it's just, whatever. People love to bitch about trendy things. People love to complain about the popularity and trendiness of a food. And they somehow tied the trendiness and popularity and flavor of pumpkin pie with misogyny. Lovely, right? You can never win. You can never win with these guys. So I am here, witches, to say that this is a pumpkin spice fan safe zone. I don't care how basic or trendy or corporate pumpkin spice gets. I will always love it because it's delicious. And I really do love pumpkin pie. I've tried pumpkin a million other ways, and listen, I only like the pie. I've tried everything else. I only like the pie, but that's okay. Because now I can use that spice blend in everything, and anything can taste like pumpkin pie if you believe. So when you break down this blend of spices, you have cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cloves, and allspice. Some people use less allspice because it doesn't ground down as fine and has a strong flavor, but I always include it. Everyone has their own way of mixing it up. Even if you use a prepared blend, like, the little orange McCormick's, you might add, extra cinnamon or whatever. My sister is a cinnamon fiend, and she loves that heat, and she adds a lot more. I am a nutmeg kind of gal, and I will really grind up like a fresh nutmeg so I can really enjoy it in the pie or in whatever it is that I'm eating. Oddly enough, when it comes to like apple anything, cinnamon all the way, man. Don't care much for the nutmeg with the apple. I want the cinnamon, but hey. So each of these spices, these botanicals, have powerful magical properties all on their own, all divided. And when combined, they're really, really great at manifesting prosperity, increasing psychic ability, and just harnessing the powers of attraction. So that can be romantic and sexual attraction. It can be for drawing a job, drawing attention. It's a very attractive blend. You can use the whole or the ground spices or oils made from them. So in mojo bags, incense blends, different grids and displays with crystals all over your altar, and candle dressings. I definitely will sprinkle a full pumpkin spice blend right out of that little orange, the little orange square, thing that it comes in onto, a quick prosperity or money candle to bring that in. But since the blend is so tasty, I'm a big fan of making spelled or magical food and drinks with it. So things like a pumpkin spice latte or the pie, or I like to put the blend into my coffee maker right in the grinds while it's brewing. So you don't have the loose powders or spices in your drink, but you have all that flavor. One of my favorite ways to use it. These spices are also used in savory foods all over the world. So we think of this as just flavoring pumpkin pie. But in the Caribbean, a lot of these spices are in the recipe for Jamaican jerk chicken. And then they add, Scotch bonnet peppers, so it just completely eviscerates that top lining of the skin of your mouth. So delicious, right? I love it. And Moroccan food features a lot of these spices, along with cardamom, which is so good. Highly recommend. Cumin, turmeric, and then they even use this outer shell of the nutmeg, which is called mace. It has a slightly different flavor. So when it comes to the limits of pumpkin pie spice, there are none. There are a million ways that you can use any of these spices in food or in magic. Now, I actually have a recipe to make a pumpkin spice blend, the one that I use, in my latest book, the Grimoire Journal, which I've shared on Instagram so you can see how much I use and exactly what each of those ingredients does. So while this spice blend or any of the individual spices in it work on their own, when you combine them with the pumpkin, the actual squash pumpkin, or even, other types of squash that might grow where you live, there's so many kinds, you have this overall energy of growth and abundance. It's great for manifesting things, for bringing things to you, and for getting more out of life. The pumpkin is a powerful earth energy ally that's ruled by Venus and the moon and the sign of Taurus. All of those things are associated with abundance and attraction type magic. There is an element of charm and romance, to the power of the pumpkin. And if you're looking for, heat or sexy stuff, that spice blend really makes it all perfect for love spells. And love magic and divination is actually a really big part of some historical Halloween parties. But I've got a whole episode coming out next week about that. So tune in next week for Halloween love divinations. But let's get back to the pumpkin spice. Starbucks may have capitalized on the pumpkin spice fall trend, but according to sociologists, the source of our obsession with that food and that flavor was actually the 2008 recession. God, I remember it. And our need for comfort foods that remind us of things like they remind us of times of happiness and abundance when we had a lot. Times like Thanksgiving, autumn equinox, depending on what you celebrate, and Halloween. None of that shocks me, considering I worked in a coffee shop in 2008 and 9, and most people said things like, oh, the pumpkin spice just makes me think of home. It reminds me of a big turkey dinner. It makes me feel cozy. And honestly, I totally agree. An interesting and infuriating aspect of the pumpkin spice trend is misogyny, and the way that this centuries-old spice blend came to stand in for the basic bitch. So often portrayed as white and in their early to mid-20s, the basic bitch loves herself a PSL or pumpkin spice latte, an infinity scarf, a cozy sweater, and a Spotify playlist with the word coffee house in the title. Since witches love fall and Halloween, we developed our own version of this archetype, the basic witch. It combines all of these things with, a love of crystals and tarot cards, some combination of yoga and finger tattoos and pastel hair colors. Now, none of these things are inherently bad or even lame. And really, pastel hair is far from basic. It takes a lot of work. But because women found joy and magic in them, the whole vibe has been, demonized. Men suddenly roll their eyes at the latte-loving autumn ladies while they describe every single grain and bubble in their bottle of homebrewed beer. If it's not obvious, what I'm trying to share here is that that's bullshit. It's bullshit. The interests of women often end up demonized, and food is especially bad. Despite women being told for decades to get back into the kitchen, the actual professional food industry is male-dominated. Most of the top chefs are men, and even within, chefdom, things considered girly, like baking fancy cupcakes, are considered way less sophisticated, way less work than cooking a slab of meat from a very fancy cow. And I don't know about y'all, but that just makes me like pumpkin spice so much more. How angry it makes men makes me want it more. It makes me want to wear pumpkin spice t-shirts and dye my hair pumpkin spice orange and drink 800 pumpkin spice lattes right in front of their dumb faces. I don't think they realize the effect that their anger had, but but that's what happened. And that is just, one of the many ways that we interrupt women's relationship with food, that we make eating and food and finding comfort in food and finding comfort in flavors and enjoying food and cooking. It's the way that we make all of that extra hard for women. It's all a big ball of diet industry bullshit, right? For some reason, when men are really, really into something food related, it becomes this big deal, right? And when women get really into something food related, it becomes a joke. You know, rosé was just a pink wine until women started liking it, and then it became, you know, white trash shit. This happens all the time. Pumpkin spice is just one of our many recent victims. Now, pie is not the only way to consume pumpkin. And this is another reason why talking shit about pumpkin spice and pumpkin food in general might be kind of a shitty thing to do in public. Long before any Europeans came here to North America and raped and pillaged their way through the first Thanksgiving, squash, like pumpkin, was a super important staple food in the diet of indigenous peoples of North America. That's where pumpkins are native to, North America. More Mexico. Within the indigenous agricultural, like this whole system, you have the three sisters of food, and these are squash, corn, and beans. Not only do, you know, having all of them provide a really healthy diet in combination with whatever other food that you can get in the area, but when you grow all of these three together, they help each other grow. So the corn gives structure for the beans to grow on, and the squash or pumpkin block the sun so weeds don't grow so much in the growing area in the garden. They also share nutrients and minerals in a symbiotic way that make them all grow larger, faster, and with a higher yield. The indigenous people were so smart about food. Honestly, I could read a million books about all of the ways that indigenous people worked with the natural landscape here in North America and made food accessible all the way through. Pumpkins and squash of all variety grow here in Canada. And they were all brought up from Mexico through the United States by various indigenous people sharing this, you know, this education about growing the three sisters. So pumpkin, squash was eaten all the time. It was mashed. It's made into soup. You can stuff it, sweeten it. You can cook it with root vegetables like, you know, like potato and yam, all of which are native to Mexico and other parts of Mesoamerica, by the way. So those indigenous people brought it all the way up. And so the indigenous people brought that all the way up. And the first instance of them calling this trio of incredible foods, the Three Sisters, is actually in modern day Illinois. You know, that's a few hours from me. I can throw a rock and hit Illinois. That is how far north the Three Sisters made it because of the indigenous populations. And that is how Europeans got a hold of it. That's exactly how. And now pumpkin and squash are huge in European cooking. So it's no surprise to me that pumpkin's magical properties include things like growth and abundance and health and harmony and connecting with the ancestors and your family. Because these are all very important tenets, parts of philosophy, beliefs of many indigenous people here in North America. Super interesting, right? By the way, weird random fact I learned recently. One way that Europeans colonized the planet that I don't think we talk about enough is food. Some of the most famous, like, regional foods from around the world are not actually native to that place, but were brought there by returning, conquistadors. So, for example, pineapple, not native to Hawaii at all. It's from South America. The potato is not native to Ireland or anywhere else in Europe, and the tomato is not native to Italy at all. All of these were taken from Mesoamerican cultures, from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, and brought back to Europe to be grown, or in the case of the pineapple, they ended up somewhere else with a much more amenable climate. And when they colonized that place, when they colonized Hawaii, one of the first presidents, or the first leader of the American state of Hawaii there was the brother of Dole. Dole Pineapple. He was the brother of the man who built the Dole factory that is still there. So the pineapple was actually like an important part of colonizing Hawaii. And now Many of us instantly think of pineapples when we think of Hawaii, and how crazy is that? I really need to find a good book about this. But let's get back to pumpkins. Because now we have to ask, how did this, this staple Native American food come to be so entwined with the very European plus colonized America holiday of Halloween? Why do we carve faces or images into pumpkins? This tradition was actually brought to North America with Scottish and Irish immigrants who used to carve faces into turnips and gourds to ward off malevolent or evil spirits around Halloween or Samhain, when ghosts and the Fae are said to walk the earth. You gotta hand it to the ancient Celts and Germanic people when it comes to spirits and supernatural beings and fairies and ghosts. They had the best ghost stories. So a lot of our cool, spooky stuff comes from Irish and Scottish immigrants that came over a very long time ago. After potatoes made it to Ireland, of course, because of the famine. But, before we carved pumpkins. There's our time frame. So when the people arrived here, pumpkins were plentiful. They're everywhere, right? They're also prettier and tastier than turnips. And so the pumpkin became the face of the jack-o'-lantern, which was named after one of those really great Irish folktales of a man named Stingy Jack, which I'm going to read for you. I love Halloween stories. I looked up a lot of versions, but I decided to read you guys the version out of a 2002 book by Silver Ravenwolf, all about Halloween, that I loved when I was, 18 years younger. So here is the story of Stingy Jack, which is how we got to carving pumpkins into jack-o'-lanterns. Once upon a time, there was a farmer by the name of Jack. He wasn't an unlikable fellow. No, he wasn't. But he was the sort of fellow that would run from honest work faster than a young'un can run from bathwater. Tall and lanky, Jack had a lopsided smile and a missing tooth. A nice laugh, one that rumbled deep from the belly, and danced about the barn quicker than a fellow with a fiddle in his hand. His hair was limp and his face was creased. Yep, that was our Jack, all right. One fine day, the devil, he got bored. Tempting the rich folk got far too easy, so he set out to find himself a poor boy. That old devil, he spied Jack sleeping under the big old oak tree out there by the garden. "Jack," he says, "I've come to take your soul. If you can climb up that oak tree and touch the top, then you can have it," said Jack. "Ain't no never mind to me." No one in the county was able to climb to the top of that big old tree, and Jack, he knew it. So the devil, he climbs the tree, but he gets stuck. Can't get down. "Jack, help me down," says the devil. "Nope," says Jack, "because if I do, you'll want to take my soul. If you stay in that tree, you can't get me." Now the devil, he thinks, and then he says, "If you help me down, I'll give you anything you want. Just name it." Jack walks around the tree, looking up at the devil from different angles. He scratches his beard and cocks his head. "Okay," says Jack. "If I let you down, you have to promise me that you'll never allow me into hell." "Done," says the devil, and Jack helps him down. "Well now," thought Jack, "this is mighty fine. I can do as I please." And so he did. Poor Jack. Nobody believed his story, so he took to drinking and then to gambling, and I hear tell he coveted the wife of a neighbor man and ran off with another. Not entirely sure. Anyway, Jack finally up and died. Now Jack went to heaven and stood in front of them pearly gates, and the angel there said, "You can't come in here. We only have room for good people, and Jack, you weren't so good down there on earth. I'm afraid you'll have to go to the other place." Jack stood in front of the gates of hell, but the demon said, "Sorry, Jack, you can't come in here. You made a deal with the devil. There's no room at this end, unless, of course, you can exchange your soul for another's." "But it's dark down here, and I can't see," said Jack. How will I find someone to take my place?" "Here," said the demon, and threw Jack a glowing coal. Now Jack, he wasn't entirely stupid, so he took himself a turnip out of the garden and hollowed it out, then put that hot coal in the turnip so he could see, as the world of in-between is mighty dark. On Halloween night, when the veil between the worlds is thin, you can see Jack and his little light across the fields and in the woods, roaming in the night, searching for someone to take his place, or somewhere he can rest. Now if you hollow out that there turnip and put a candle in it, then Jack will think you're lost too. He won't pay you no never mind. He never was a really smart fella. Isn't that fun? So that's why we carve scary faces or images into pumpkins. The idea there is to trick Jack. You are also a lost soul. He doesn't want your soul. It's lost too. There's no place. This story is so similar to other English folktales, notably Will o' the Wisp. And you notice the same naming style, Will o' the Wisp, Will of the Wisp, whereas Jack is the Jack of the Lantern. So Jack o' Lantern. Isn't that fun? So that's why we do it. But as witches, you can use any tool for magic. So why not a pumpkin? You can carve sigils and symbols into your pumpkin for protection, fill it with spices and herbs that allow their energy to be released as you burn a candle inside, or even use the pumpkin in sympathetic magic by carving a real face, someone's face, into that pumpkin. In one of my favorite Halloween movies and books, which is The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury, the jack-o'-lantern's filling up this big, gnarly, it's just a really twisted, amazing tree full of jack-o'-lanterns. And they're all different, all with different faces, because they represent real souls. The story follows a group of friends trying to help their friend Pipkin steal and hold onto his precious pumpkin soul, a jack-o'-lantern with his likeness carved into it, so that the angel of death type character can't take it from him. So you can carve a face into your pumpkin to help someone heal, to attract or find love, to bring them prosperity or money, or of course to take some of that stuff from them. Smashing a pumpkin with the face of your nemesis on it just sounds cathartic as hell. Highly recommend it. You can also, fill it with things to cast a curse and leave it to degrade in the ground. All sorts of ways to use a pumpkin and the spices in any of your magical practices. I know from experience that anxiety, fear, and depression can keep you from manifesting your most magical life on the best of days. And witches, these days are not the best. That's why, if you're struggling or feeling lost, I want you to consider reaching out to a professional licensed therapist through BetterHelp. Within 24 hours, they'll assess your needs and match you with a therapist that is specially trained to deal with everything from depression and anxiety to grief, conflicts at home, and even sexuality and gender across the spectrum. It's all online, so there's no awkward social distancing in the waiting room. You're in the comfort and safety of home. You can message your therapist anytime and schedule weekly audio or video chat sessions. The service is available worldwide. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and they offer financial aid to those who need it. Lately, so many people have been reaching out that BetterHelp is actually recruiting more counselors in all 50 states right now. I want you to manifest the life of your dreams, starting today. As a listener, you can get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/fatfeministwitch. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/fatfeministwitch. Wild Fawn was founded on the belief that everyone could benefit from more ritual in their lives. These 100% soy wax candles are handcrafted by a Portland witch with their own unique blend of scents to evoke the magic of the seasons and Sabbaths. Whether you're burning scents like ritual, with cleansing sage and lavender while you're practicing magic, or relaxing with a witchy book and the harvest candle that smells like autumn leaves and spices, Wild Fawn's aromas are sure to set the perfect magical mood. For you fellow Halloween witches, the Samhain candle smells like summer honey, fall leaves, and tonka bean, all tied together with a crackling wooden wick that really brings that cool and spooky All Hallows Eve vibe. Find Wild Fawn's entire catalog of scents on their website, the link to which you can find in the description. And do it soon, because from now until the end of October, Fat Feminist Witch listeners can get 10% off their entire order using the code FATFEMINISTWITCH at checkout on wildfawn.com. Celebrate Samhain and the thinning of the veil with Green Moon Apothecary, a subscription box that offers tools for self-care, witchcraft, and wellness, all with a cannabis-infused twist. In modern-day witchcraft, more and more people are exploring how the cannabis plant can be incorporated into their spiritual practices. Each of Green Moon Apothecary's boxes includes specially curated items to assist with ritual and spell work, manifestation, and divination, all while celebrating the spirit of the cannabis plant and the wheel of the year. Indulge in enchantment by subscribing to a Green Moon box, or explore their many magical witchy weed products at greenmoon.ca. Be sure to follow the Witches of Green Moon on Instagram at green.moon.apothecary for their latest news and witch tips. Fat Feminist Witch listeners can get 10% off their first order with the code FFW10. If you order the Samhain box by October 19th, you are guaranteed to get it by Halloween. So visit greenmoon.ca today. Something else beloved by basic witches and bitches alike is a cozy rom-com with a supernatural twist, like Practical Magic, which we're going to talk about today. For those who have not seen it, Practical Magic came out in 1998 and stars Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman as sisters Sally and Gillian Owens, who come from a long line of very notorious witch women in their small Massachusetts town/island. For over 200 years, the Owens women have been kind of followed around by a wicked curse that causes the death of any man they truly love. After their mother dies of a broken heart following the death of their father, Sally and Gillian go to live with the aunts, Frances and Jet, who live in what is quite possibly the most conspicuously witchy house that isn't made of gingerbread. Just phenomenal. Most of the movie takes place years later, years after all that, when Sally and Gillian are both grown and trying to distance themselves from the curse and from their entire magical lineage. Gillian runs off to the Southwest and, fucks and trips her way all through it. Awesome. Sally settles down with a really adorable man and has 2 little babies who look just like Sally and Gillian, with curly brown and fiery red hair, respectively. But of course, Sally's husband gets hit by a truck. Gillian's boyfriend starts beating on her. They kill him. They unsuccessfully resurrect him and then bury him in the yard. And the ants bounce when they start to get the impression that something is up. Meanwhile, a very cute investigator from Arizona comes looking for the dead boyfriend, who is a Transylvanian cowboy, by the way. And of course, hijinks ensue. Now, I've watched this movie so many times, I probably have it all memorized, so it's easy for me to make jokes, to be funny about it. But this movie really is incredibly deep and emotional for me. While the love and relationship plots are important, right, because it's a romance story, the real love that is explored throughout it is the love that these women have for each other, and with the non-witch women of this small town. The Owenses, despite being the original inhabitants of this island, according to the film, are not welcome there. The women of the town especially hate these witches, mainly for the offenses of being sexy and stealing their men. Really, they might not even steal their men, it's just that they've been taught to always hate them from the beginning. For 200 years, all little girls are told to avoid them. All little boys are told to avoid them, lest you get caught in their web. But the climax of the movie isn't about any of these women falling in romantic love with men. It's about the sisters coming together to save each other and about the women of the town finally letting go of this internalized hatred to come through for a woman whose abusive boyfriend needed to get gone. The love between all these women actually breaks the curse afflicting the Owens women, who are then free to love how they please. Isn't that beautiful? How great is that? This story really is about sisterhood at the most basic level, biological sisters and the ones that we choose. I still cry when I watch it, no matter how many times I watch it. And I love watching it with my actual sister, who introduced me to it back in the 90s. It just reminds me how important it is to have caring and supportive friends that I can trust to come through for me and for whom I can also be a source of strength. The movie is funny, it's sweet, it's romantic, and it's full of really cool witchy visuals. Oh my god, the whole house. You got the big family grimoire. You have these sisters with their vibrantly different looks and styles. You have these older aunts living in that man-free lifestyle, mixing up midnight margaritas. It's just crazy. There's a greenhouse and a potion room and sprawling gardens. There's black cats everywhere. I just love it. It's the dream. The one drawback to this movie is that there are literally 0 people of color. 0. I know a small Massachusetts town/island is going to be mostly white. But wow! I probably wouldn't be interested in seeing a movie with an all-white, presumably heterosexual cast these days. 90s were a different time. It's glaringly obvious to me, but I will admit that I didn't notice it about the movie until a few years back, when I started to become more aware of things like that. Really is a downside for the movie. So if you're going to watch it and you never have before, just a heads up. Practical Magic, the movie, is based on a book, Practical Magic. Actually, now it's a series of books. Practical Magic is a very good book, but a book that is very, very different from the movie. The overall kind of plot points remain, but the book is so loaded with details and descriptions, and it follows Sally and Jillian much more closely and through way more of their lives. We see more of the effect of their legacy of magic on their lives and on the lives of people around them. We see more of their particular type of magic, and unfortunately, a little less town-wide sisterhood. I'm not alone in admitting that I enjoy the movie much more. I've discovered that I'm not the only one, You always think, oh, the book's better. The book is great, but very different. I like the film's characters better, but in both renditions, I really love the type of magic that, these sisters kind of have, and in the book you get more of it. Alice Hoffman is my favorite kind of fiction writer because she really over-describes the world and the characters and the way that they make others feel. It's all very intuitive and emotional. She weaves this incredibly rich world with her words, and I like that. I love very descriptive books. Something I've noticed in her writing that features magic, and there's more than just the Practical Magic series, is that a lot of this magic is unintentional. In the film, too. The Owens women don't actually need to purposely cast a spell for something unexplainable, but definitely magical, happen around them. They don't have wands, that they're waving around. They don't mutter a lot of incantations, really. Magic just exists wherever they are, and it oozes out of them. They're all very psychic and intuitive, without trying. Their actions, the things they put out into the world, all have magical effects and consequences. This has always been one of my favorite kind of elements of this particular witch, these Owens witches. I have spooky little things happen around me all the time, Nothing to the degree of these fictional witches. But it's an interesting feeling because it feels like I'm not making magic, but something magical is happening because both nature and I have tapped into this energy. When you're aware of magic, it's easier to see and interact with. The magic of nature is always around us, even when we completely ignore it. I love the idea that it's like It's like a tiny little magical storm, you know? These two magical energy fronts get near each other and suddenly there's an explosion of magic. You know, a lilac bush grows overnight, or a ring appears around the moon, or dishes fly off a counter. To me, that is very realistic. That is a very realistic type of magic to me. Now, these witches still do purposely work magic, the aunts in particular who make their living that way. But there is also just this magical energy around them that I really like. I can't help you recreate unconscious natural magic, unfortunately, but some of the spells and herbs that we get to see are pretty interesting and have some basis in reality, in witchy reality anyways. First is Belladonna, deadly nightshade, which is abusive boyfriend Jimmy Angelov's undoing. Jillian carries a small vial of dried belladonna flakes, which she says comes from her Aunt Jet in the garden. It's used as a sedative to induce sleep. Now, Jillian is not taking it herself. She's slipping it into her boyfriend's drinks when he gets too obsessive or she needs privacy. Already, it's pretty clear that this is not a healthy situation. And the actor, Goran Vishnik, super babe. I love to see him in everything. When he showed up in season 3 of Santa Clarita Diet, I lost my shit. He's wonderful. So I kind of get it, but no dick's that good. Just saying. Jimmy dies of a belladonna overdose. And in both versions, the sisters then bury him in Sally's yard. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. Do not dry and dose yourself with belladonna to help you sleep. Please do not do this. It is so toxic, so poisonous. And if you take it over time, it really can have effects that build up in your bloodstream. It enters very, very quickly. You really should consult a very real expert in this plant, in poisonous plants and their uses before you touch it. And before that you use it in magic or in any other way, because it does have medicinal purposes. A lot of our poisonous witch plants have medicinal purposes. Now, you can get belladonna essences and ointments from banefolk.com, run by Sarah Ann Lawless, who really, really knows her shit. You can also get charms, charms made with actual bits of the plant, cast in resin, and sigils, and really cool classes from the Poisoner's Apothecary. I'll put the link in the description. I highly recommend following him on social media if you want to learn more about magical poison plants, because he posts tons of incredible information, incredible photos. He makes plant spirit sigils for poisonous plants. Highly recommend. Anyways, belladonna is highly witchy and associated with not only seduction, it's belladonna. So it's associated with seduction, astral travel, divination, and witchcraft, This is what made it a major ingredient in psychedelic flying ointments, because it does have some psychedelic type properties. Some believed it belonged to the devil, and that every nightshade was tended to by him personally. The reactant, the drug, the chemical in belladonna that poisons you or gets you high, depending on what's happening, is atropine, named after Atropos, the Roman fate that cut the thread of life. Spooky shit, right? I love that. I love it. It is one of my favorite plants to read about. Now, unfortunately, the variety of belladonna that grows here in alleyways that has bright red berries and very small purple flowers that I've always called deadly nightshade, with a fun little voice like that. That is not the same variety of belladonna, though they are in the same family. And the one that grows in my alley, this pretty little weed, is also toxic. It's also toxic and poisonous and can hurt you. And though it shares a lot of the same magical properties as the original plant with the large, purple black berries, not red, its energy is just not quite as intense and ancient as our original deadly nightshade. This plant became known as belladonna, which is Italian for beautiful lady, because Roman women would make a distillation of the berry's juice and turn it into eye drops. So they would drop it in their eyes to dilate their pupils and make them appear large and dark and very seductive. Of all the poisons that they could have used in this movie, get yourself the Agatha Christie Dictionary of Poisons. this one is definitely the most appropriate for our story because it really, really matches the effect that the Owens women are said to have on men. They're seductive, mysterious, beautiful, and dangerous, just like Belladonna. Very good. It was a very good pick. So after the sisters kill Jimmy, they decide to resurrect him so they won't get put in jail for for murder. I was just thinking how stupid that was. I'm way more afraid of ghosts than cops. I'm not going to pull your leg by telling you that this was some very authentic ancient resurrection spell because I doubt there is such a thing. But one detail in the spell really stands out. The witches chant something like, "Mighty Hecate, make it right." The goddess they're referencing here is actually Hecate. Although I fully support not actually using her full name in the movie. You never know what's going to happen, right? Having two women chanting the name of a goddess of death might be a bad thing. But that's who they're referencing, Hecate, the Greek goddess of the crossroads, of death, witches, and dogs. Though to call Hecate a goddess is actually an understatement. Aphrodite, Venus, that was a goddess. She was a goddess. Hecate was a titan. The larger, stronger, shinier, and less human deities who walked the earth before the birth of the Olympians. These were the Titans. Zeus, the king of the Olympians, eradicated the Titans, beat them in a war, became the king, and locked many Titans up. But one of the ones that he did not dare fuck with was Hecate. This dark goddess was so revered and feared that she was able to keep all her powers, all her magic, and all of her status. She could do things and go places that no one else could. Hecate has the key to every door, physical or metaphysical. She is in every crossroads, walks every path, and is in the air of every dark night. She's so tuned in to the underworld that from Earth, Hecate could hear Persephone weeping softly as she ate her pomegranate seeds. No one knew where she was until Hecate could hear her. She's the goddess of witches and of witchcraft in ancient Greece. So for all these reasons, it's not surprising to hear them invoke her for a resurrection type spell. But we witches in the know can see Hecate's fingerprints all over the story of these Owens witches. Belladonna, we just talked about, is a plant ruled by Saturn and Pluto and associated with the goddess Hecate and the enchantress who was also a Titan, Circe. In some stories, Hecate is described as Circe's mother just because their powers are so closely aligned, and because they're both incredibly powerful, solitary witches without a lot of patience for men. Right before Sally's husband is killed, we see a big, fluffy black dog following him to work. Very cute. This makes him smile. A really cute smile, let's say. Probably because he has no idea that this dog is an omen. This dog could be an emissary of Hecate or the goddess herself or just an omen, just a bit of energy. But it's there at the moment that he leaves the path of the living and heads into the underworld because that is Hecate's domain, is that moment. Not only that, but in the book, we hear a lot about Gillian's obvious signs of aging, and in general coping with how love and beauty change as you grow old. This is a huge theme in the book. On the fly actors in the movie, none of them have worries about getting, none of them are worried about age. Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock were fresh-faced, and, even Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest, who play the aunts, aren't nearly as old as they are in the book. So it doesn't come up as much. But in the book, Gillian's face is full of lines and wrinkles. Her skin is damaged by the hot sun. She's been smoking forever, but she's still very stunning and attractive, seductive. Even, young boys, you can't, help but sit there and stare at her because she's just the most beautiful lady in the world. Hecate is a crone goddess and is often a symbol of holding on to your power as you age instead of feeling weakened. Aging's so difficult for women, right? And Hecate serves as a reminder that age is a blessing and a source of power. The aunts in the book they're very Hecatean, they're so old and gray that no one really knows how old they are. They dress all in black, lots of big black skirts. So they're just described the same way that Hecate often is. Super fun. I love seeing the patron goddess of witchcraft appearing in and being referenced in a movie about witches that's considered kind of a fun, frivolous movie, It's like a cool witchy secret. So keep an eye out for Hecate all throughout Practical Magic. The final piece of intentional magic that we see in the film and the book is the exorcism or containment of the nasty ghost of Jimmy Angelov. This is the part of the story where the film really, really shines. It outshines the book. When the sisters bury Jimmy in the yard, bullfrogs begin to gather, bugs, mosquitoes, and these incredible blood red rose bushes grow there overnight. His spirit is angry. In the book, though there's no resurrection spell, Jimmy's spirit is still not at rest. Instead of roses over his grave, these gigantic lilac bushes grow. The flowers, the lilacs, are larger, more vibrant, and more fragrant than any other lilacs anyone's ever seen. And they continue to bloom well into August. I would pay $1 million for those lilacs, by the way. The scent of those lilacs, those magical lilacs, induces, memories and visions in people who walk by, often of someone that they loved who died. People start appearing on the sidewalk to feel and grieve by the flowers, to smell the scent. And the poor teenage witches inside, because Sally's daughters are teenagers during this part of the book, they can feel all that. They can feel the love and the grief, and they can see the memories and feel everything these people are feeling. And it's so powerful to them that they end up kicking people off the sidewalk a few times. They can't help being so psychic. Red roses are an obviously good choice for a very thorny love story, but I just loved the description of those lilacs in the book. That's never going to leave my mind. And the scent of those flowers is so distracting and so intoxicating that I can absolutely see it having this power, especially if it were influenced by a really mean ghost. In the film, Jimmy's spirit actually possesses Jillian, and the Owens witches need to perform an exorcism and then, quote, seal his nasty spirit back into the grave. They need a full coven, as many as they can get. So for the first time in her life, Sally reaches out to the other women of her age in town, the bitchy PTA moms that hate her, that bullied her as a child. You see, the whole phone tree activate. So, she calls the first person, they call someone, till everyone is aware. And when these normal human women start explaining what's up, the situation to each other, I nearly bawl my eyes out. It's just so lovely. So they say things like, it turns out her sister just got out of a really bad relationship and the guy will not leave her alone. And that's so simple, isn't it? It doesn't really matter that he's a ghost and she's a witch. She is a woman with an abusive boyfriend who needs bitches to have her back. And they do, because that is something that they get. They understand. They show up with brooms, they bond with each other, they make peace with the Owenses and with their history of the bullying and the name-calling. And when it comes time to work the magic to exorcise Jimmy, these women who have never practiced witchcraft in their life get right into it. Get right into it, You can see them, they're pouring all of their fucking energy into the spell. They're giving it everything they've got. Their hair is coming out of its their hair was up and it's falling out and they're sweaty and, their mom cardigans are falling off. It's really, really incredible. They follow the aunt's instructions and incantations. They don't fuck around. They link hands and they all together break the curse that has been plaguing every single woman and man in this town for centuries. Especially the women. I mean, the men may be the ones to die. I'll give you that. But a single death can rock a small community, honestly. And for centuries, these Owens women have been, quote unquote, killing all of the sexy men in town, leaving nothing for the other straight women who are left behind. I'm not saying it's right, but I can see how that would suck. and how you might get a little bit mad. When Maria originally cast the curse back in, the 1690s, she focused so much on her lover who never came for her. But when you're actually watching that hanging scene, most of the people in the crowd are women. There's special attention paid to the townswomen who are hanging her. Not only does her lover never come for her, but no one comes for her when she's abandoned on the island. To break that curse, all of those women had to finally come through for each other, to correct that mistake, to learn that romantic love and, men are just a part of life, not your whole life. The curse is then lifted not only from the shoulders of the actual witches, but of everyone. That's just amazing. That's amazing. It's beautiful. There's no powerful magic than love in any form. Having people who support you, help you, heal you, keep you safe, and make you laugh makes life magical. It lightens your burden, and it gives you an opportunity to lighten the burden of others. And this is exactly what makes the film so special. I mean, the book's wonderful. It's incredible. And the prequel, The Rules of Magic, which tells the stories of the aunts, one of the best books I've ever read. I like it better than Practical Magic itself, I'm going to be honest. And I can't wait to read magic lessons, to learn more of the story of Maria and the casting of the curse. I'm hoping there will be more focus on the other women in town and how the relationship between all of them contributes to this these centuries of pain. But either way, I'm sure I'll love it. And so, my lovely Halloween witches, I hope that when you sit down on a crisp fall day with your pumpkin spice latte and your cozy sweater and your favorite witchy rom-com, you'll be able to see some of the very real magic of the season. Don't ever feel shame in enjoying autumn or pumpkins or Halloween or really anything that others tell you is uncool. Nothing is uncool. As we just learned, everything has deeper magic attached to it. Every jack-o'-lantern lit on Halloween is seen by Jack as he wanders the between world looking for a place to rest his soul. Every pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg increases your power and passion and psychic ability. Every sweet black dog following you, fork in the road, and dark night has the mark of the goddess of witchcraft. And every sweet treat and act of generosity reminds us of the overwhelming power of love and kindness. To learn more about me or the Fat Feminist Witch podcast, check out my website at thefatfeministwitch.com or find me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, or Facebook. To support the show, you can, of course, buy my books Green Witchcraft and the Grimoire Journal, both which came out this year. These books were written for witches of all skill levels to help you begin a relationship with the planet or grow the one you have and craft a very personal magical practice. You can find the recipe for my pumpkin spice blend in the Grimoire Journal. Other ways to support the show are by making a donation. You can do that by going to my website and clicking Buy Me a Coffee. And you can also go to patreon.com/thefatfeministwitch to join my private monthly membership group. If you have a witchy product, service, or publication, and you want to reach a magical audience, you can advertise here on the show. Just go to advertisecast.com/thefatfeministwitch to learn more and to get started. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend full of Halloween magic, witches.